What grows in the forest? We were supposed to be looking for a missing girl. Her name was Quincy, 14 years old. She wandered away from a campsite to try and find a phone signal, and she never came back. That was 2 days before they called for volunteers. Now I didn't know her, and I didn't know her parents, but I showed up anyway. Around here, that's what you do. When a kid goes missing, you help. They assigned me to a grid section past the old fire break. I was paired with a buddy of mine, Joel, a retired firefighter with a permanent squint and a voice that sounded like it came through gravel. And there was Owen, this kid I didn't really know, early 20s, quiet but polite. The search was slow, just woods, quiet and unremarkable at first. But after a while, the silence started feeling heavy. There weren't any birds nor bugs even. Just the sound of our boots cracking old twigs. Nothing else. That's when we found this grove. At first I thought the trees were just unusually pale birch, tall, thin trunks. But when we got closer, I stopped walking. Something about them didn't feel right. It wasn't like any bark I'd seen before. It wasn't rough at all. Actually, it was incredibly smooth. Joel stepped forward and placed a hand on one of the trunks, and a second later, he recoiled and stared at his palm like he'd touched a hot stove. It moved, he said. I stepped closer and reached out myself. When my fingers touched the surface, the tree gave just slightly, like there was something inside it that rose and fell in rhythm. A slow pulse. Breathing. I backed away immediately, and Joel said nothing after that. He just pulled out a strip of red tape and marked the trunk, while I radioed it in. They told us to continue on. Said they'd send someone to check later. We kept walking, but I don't think any of us were really searching after that. That was unreal. Not natural. But there wasn't a moment more we wanted to stay there. That night, Joel sent me a photo he'd taken earlier. A close-up of the base of one of the pale trunks. I had to look at it for a long time before I understood what I was seeing. There were toes. Human toes, bent and distorted, nearly grown over by the trunk itself, but still unmistakable. 5 of them, curled and fused into the bark like they'd been molded from inside. We both froze, unable to comprehend if that could even be real. I hardly slept that night. There was this pressure in my chest, a sheer panic I couldn't rid off. The next morning, they shut down our search grid entirely. Forensics came in with biohazard suits, and they didn't tell us much. But I managed to speak with one of the lab techs later. He was standing behind the trailer smoking a cigarette with both hands shaking. "It's human," he said. "The tree, or what you thought was a tree." He smirked and flicked the cigarette. "It's made of compact bone. The bark is skin, real skin. It even had marrow inside." I couldn't speak. My mind was running circles, adrenaline clashing with panic in a way that made nothing make sense. He nodded. "We got the DNA results," he added quietly. "Quincy. And 3 other missing persons, some going back years." That was all I needed to hear. Joel and I left the staging site that afternoon. Owen came with us. I honestly don't remember when he rejoined us, or whether he ever even left. He was just there, walking behind us as we made our way back toward the village. We didn't speak. It was that specific kind of silence, one that none of us wanted to break. Just walking, just needing a drink, something to reset reality. About half an hour into the walk, we saw another tree. It was standing alone in a clearing, pale and still wet-looking, like it hadn't finished drying yet. The surface shimmered slightly in the light, and I reached out and touched it before I could stop myself. It was warm, not sun-warmed, body-warm. There were strips of tissue hanging from the upper branches, swaying gently like red leaves. At the base of the trunk, half buried in soil and flesh, was a torn shoulder patch. "Police issue," Joel muttered, stepping closer, and then I heard something. It was a whisper. Very close. Close enough to make me turn around even though I didn't want to. "Hi." I turned, and Owen was gone. Or rather, Owen wasn't there anymore. In his place was something bent and long-limbed, crouched low on all fours. Its spine arched unnaturally. Its legs were twisted, bent backward like a broken animal. Its jaw was split and curled open toward the top of its head, revealing a grin that didn't belong on anything human. Its eyes were pits of red light, wide and motionless. Joel didn't scream. His body just rose like something had gripped him invisibly and pulled him upward. His ribs bent outward one by one, tearing his skin. His spine snapped with the sound of dry twigs. Flesh peeled back in silent strips. Every movement was methodical, precise. Bones twisted out and curled forward. Muscle and tendon folded into the shape of roots. His body reshaped itself into something tall, white and still. He wasn't dying. He was becoming. I turned and ran. I ran straight back to the village. I didn't stop to look back. Didn't stop to listen. By the time I reached the first house on the outskirts, my legs were numb, my chest was burning, and I collapsed in someone's yard. I don't know who helped me or how I got inside, but that night, I dreamed. At least I think it was. I felt my body being dragged across something cold. My limbs wouldn't respond. I was fully awake, but completely paralyzed and couldn't even open my mouth. Couldn't scream, but I felt everything. The pain came slowly, not like an injury, not sharp. It was deep and spreading, like something pulling apart the pieces of me from the inside. My legs twisted inward, my spine curled, my chest began to open. I remember the sound of each bone cracking one by one. I remember the warmth of the ground swallowing my back, and the pressure of roots slipping over my skin like fingers. And then I woke up. I was on the floor next to the bed, drenched in sweat. My arms ached. My ribs felt sore, like I'd been curled into myself for hours. It was the most vivid dream I've ever had, one I knew would haunt me for the rest of my life. "Joel," I whispered to no one. I told myself it was stress, a night terror, my brain trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Kenneth, the old man who owned the house, came to check on me, said he'd heard me shouting. I guess he was the one who'd helped me in. I didn't know him well, but at that point, any face felt like a lifeline. I asked if I could call the police. I needed to know what happened to Joel. They said they'd found more trees, and yes, one of them matched his DNA. Then I asked about Owen. There was a pause on the line, and the voice asked me to repeat the name. I did. The quiet kid. The third one assigned to our group. Another pause. "We didn't send you out in threes," the woman said. "You were paired with Joel. All teams were in pairs." She asked if I was feeling okay. Said I'd been reported missing. Said Joel was last seen with me. Asked if I could tell them where I was. I was confused. How long was I out? And I hung up. I walked downstairs slowly, my knees shaky, one step at a time, barely able to walk, like my limbs were limp, like I couldn't fully control them. My mind was racing. My stomach felt hollow. And then I saw it. Kenneth was floating in the middle of the living room, his limbs twitching, bending, Bones cracked, flesh tore open. He collapsed backward into the floorboards as something burrowed through him, reshaping him from the inside out. He didn't scream. He just wept quietly. And then something whispered again, right beside me. "Hi-am." I turned. The creature was back, tall, long-jawed, covered in pale fur. Its eyes were deep, hollow red, fixated on me. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only feel the pain spreading again, deep, familiar pain, like my limbs were being torn and rearranged. My chest tightened. My spine curled. I saw a blur through the tears, and all I could do is watch while my life is coming to an end. Then I saw the creature flickered, shrieking, morphing, changing. Its eyes were now human, on a human face, attached to a human shape. A shape I now recognized inside a mirror, my own.